The champagne tower collapsed at exactly 9:47 p.m. I know because I was watching the clock, counting down the minutes until my shift ended, when 300 crystal glasses shattered across the marble floor of the Grandeur Hotel ballroom. Someone screamed, crystal exploded like ice under gunfire, and somewhere in the chaos a bride ran. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Magnolia Sawyer, and I'm nobody. 23 years old, orphaned at 16, working 3 jobs to keep a roof over my head in a city that chews up girls like me and spits out the bones. The Grandeur Hotel housekeeping job was supposed to be the good one, the safe one. Clean rooms, stay invisible, collect a paycheck, survive another week. I should have known better. Nothing in this city is safe when you're poor and powerless. All the wedding was supposed to be closed to staff. The 9th floor ballroom had been reserved for a private event, the kind where security swept the halls twice, and management reminded us that discretion meant keeping our jobs. But weddings create messes, and messes need cleaning, so when my supervisor barked at me to handle the service corridors during the reception, I didn't argue. I never argue. Arguing gets you noticed, and being noticed gets you hurt. The event itself was excessive even by grandeur standards. White roses everywhere, thousands of them, their perfume so thick it felt like drowning. Gold-rimmed china, champagne flowing like water. Men in suits worth more than my yearly salary, women dripping in jewellery that could feed my neighbourhood for months. I recognized the type: old money, new blood, and the kind of people who controlled this city from rooms exactly like this one. I'd been collecting abandoned glasses from a service alcove when I first heard the raised voices. I said no. The woman's voice cut through the music, sharp and cold. I froze, half hidden behind a marble column, my tray balanced on my hip. Staff weren't supposed to hear family disagreements. Staff weren't supposed to exist at all in moments like this. You'll do as you're told, Cordelia. Both families have agreed. I don't care what anyone agreed to. I'm not marrying a cripple. The word hit like a slap. Even from 30 feet away, even half hidden in the shadows, I felt it land. Felt the cruelty in it, the dismissive venom. The ceremony is starting in 10 minutes. Then start it without me. I should have moved. One should have disappeared back into the service corridors where people like me belonged. But something kept me frozen. Maybe the ice in her voice, maybe the way the older man tried to grab her arm and she yanked away with a snarl. I won't spend my life pushing around a broken man in a wheelchair. Find another solution. She swept past my hiding spot in a cloud of expensive perfume and rustling silk, her wedding dress, easily $15,000 of imported lace and crystal beading, trailing behind her like a battle standard. 3 women followed her, bridesmaids in matching champagne gowns, their faces masks of practiced neutrality. The man she'd been arguing with stood alone near the ballroom entrance, his face grey. He pulled out a phone, fingers trembling slightly, and I heard him say in a hoarse whisper, "Sir, we have a problem." That's when I made my mistake. I shifted my weight and the glasses on my tray clinked together. His head snapped toward me. Our eyes met, and I watched him calculate exactly how much I'd overheard. "You." His voice had gone flat, dangerous. "Come here." Every instinct I had screamed to run, but running meant getting caught, and getting caught by these people meant things I didn't want to imagine. So I stepped out from behind the column, keeping my eyes down, my posture submissive. "Yes, sir?" "You heard nothing. You saw nothing. If I hear one word of this conversation repeated anywhere to anyone, you'll disappear. Do you understand?" I understood. In this city, people like me disappeared all the time. The police didn't look too hard when the missing person was poor, female, and without family. "Yes, sir." "I understand." He studied me for a long moment, then jerked his head toward the service door. "Get out of here. Don't come back to this floor tonight." I didn't need to be told twice. I hurried toward the exit, my heart hammering, relief flooding through me with each step. I'd survive this. I'd keep my head down, keep my mouth shut, and in a week, this would be nothing but a bad memory. I was reaching for the door handle when the ballroom doors burst open behind me. The crash made me spin around. Men poured into the hallway, big men, dangerous men, the kind whose suits couldn't quite hide the weapons underneath. They moved with military precision, forming a protective corridor from the ballroom to the private elevator. And through that corridor came him, Silas Blackwood. I'd never seen him in person before, but I'd heard the name. Everyone in this city had heard the name. The Blackwood family controlled the Western Territories, shipping, construction, unions, and whatever darker enterprises happened in the shadows between legal businesses. They'd ruled for 3 generations, each boss more ruthless than the last. Silas Blackwood had taken control at 25 when his father was killed in what the newspapers called a business dispute. That was 2 years ago. The rumour mill said he'd reorganised the entire operation in 6 months, eliminated his father's killers, and doubled the family's profits. They said he was brilliant, calculating, absolutely merciless when crossed. They also said he'd taken 3 bullets in an ambush meant to finish what his father's killers started, 2 in the chest, 1 in the spine. The chest wounds had healed, the spine hadn't. He moved through the hallway in a wheelchair that probably cost more than my car, pushed by a massive bodyguard with dead eyes. But it wasn't the chair I noticed. It was him. Dark hair swept back from a face that belonged on Renaissance sculptures. All sharp angles and aristocratic bones. Eyes the colour of whiskey in low light, currently scanning the hallway with methodical precision. A jaw that looked carved from stone, set in a hard line that suggested rage being held on a very tight leash. He was still in his wedding suit. Charcoal black with subtle pinstripes, tailored perfectly to broad shoulders that suggested he'd been powerfully built before the shooting. A white rose boutonniere on his lapel, already wilting. His hands rested on the chair's armrests, and I noticed the rings. Heavy silver, possibly steel, aren't the kind that would add weight to a punch. Not that he could punch anyone anymore. The thought came unbidden, and I hated myself for it. Hated that my mind had gone there, had reduced him to his injury just like his bride clearly had. He was scanning the hallway, and his eyes landed on me. Everything stopped. The noise, my heartbeat, time itself seemed to freeze under the weight of that stare. I'd been caught in searchlights before, questioned by cops who assumed poverty meant criminality. But this was different. This wasn't scrutiny. This was assessment. Like he was looking inside me and cataloguing everything he found. "Who's that?" His voice was low, controlled, carrying an edge of absolute authority. The older man from before, the one who'd threatened me, stepped forward quickly. "No one, sir. Just staff. I'll have her removed." I asked who she is, not what she is. The distinction seemed important to him. The older man hesitated. "Her name is Magnolia Sawyer, sir. Housekeeping. She overheard Miss Cordelia's departure." I watched Silas Blackwood's expression shift by millimetres. A tightening around his eyes, a muscle jumping in his jaw. He knew. He knew his bride had abandoned him, and now he knew I'd witnessed the humiliation. "Everyone out," he said quietly. "Except her." The hallway erupted in protest. His men moved closer, hands drifting toward concealed weapons. The older man started objecting about security protocols, but Silas simply raised one hand, and the protests died like candles in wind. I said, "Everyone, out." They left. Even the bodyguard who'd been pushing his chair backed away slowly. Though I saw his hand rest on something under his jacket, within seconds the hallway was empty except for me and the man I'd seen abandoned at his own wedding. The silence was suffocating. "Come closer." It wasn't a request. My legs moved before my brain could protest. I stopped about 6 feet away, close enough to see the flecks of green in his whiskey-coloured eyes, far enough that I could maybe run if this went badly. "You heard what she said." Not a question. A statement. Lying seemed worse than admitting it. "Yes, sir." "And you felt pity." That surprised me. "No, sir." "No?" One dark eyebrow arched. "You don't pity the cripple abandoned at his own wedding." The words sounded different in his mouth, sharp and bitter, a weapon he was testing against himself. I met his eyes and told him the truth because what did I have to lose anymore? Or so I felt rage. Now both eyebrows went up. "Explain." "She used your injury as an excuse to be cruel. But cruelty like that doesn't come from wheelchairs or bullets. It comes from character. She would have found some other reason to hurt you eventually. You're better off without her." The words hung between us. I watched him absorb them, watched something shift in his expression that I couldn't quite read. "You're either very brave or very stupid, Magnolia Sawyer." "Probably stupid, sir." A sound escaped him. Not quite a laugh, but close. It transformed his face for half a second, made him look younger, less carved from granite. "The ballroom is still full of guests," he said, his tone shifting to something businesslike. 200 people waiting for a wedding that isn't happening. My family's associates, her family's associates, media from 3 countries. Do you understand what kind of embarrassment this creates?" I didn't. Not really. My world didn't include media attention or political marriages or family associations that sounded like criminal enterprises. "I imagine it's significant, sir." "It's catastrophic." He wheeled himself closer, moving with surprising speed and grace. Both families agreed to this alliance. Treaties were signed. Territories were divided. Her family's backing was supposed to secure my position against rivals who still see me as weak because of this. He gestured dismissively at the wheelchair. "You're not weak." The words came out before I could stop them. He went very still. "You don't know me." "No, sir. But weak men don't take control of empires at 25. Weak men don't survive 3 bullets and come out the other side running everything. Weak men let heartbreak show on their faces. You're doing none of those things." He stared at me for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was sharp and dangerous and made my pulse spike. "What do you know about organized crime, Magnolia?" "Only what everyone knows. Stay clear of it if you want to live." Smart girl. And yet here you are. He moved even closer now, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something expensive and woody with an undertone of smoke. "I need to go back into that ballroom. I need to salvage this disaster before both families start a war over the insult. And I need to do it in a way that makes me look strong, not pathetic." I didn't understand what this had to do with me until he held out his hand. "Dance with me." My brain short-circuited. What?" "You heard me." His hand stayed extended, steady and unwavering. "Walk back into that ballroom with me. When they ask where my bride is, I'll tell them I chose better, that I sent her away because I found someone more worthy." "That's insane. I'm a maid. They'll never believe. They'll believe what I tell them to believe." His voice hardened. "I'm offering you a role, Magnolia. Play it well, and I'll make sure you're compensated. Play it badly and, well, you're already a witness to family embarrassment. You're a liability either way." The threat was clear. Help him or disappear. But underneath the threat, I heard something else, something that sounded almost like desperation. "You want me to pretend to be your bride? I want you to walk into that ballroom on my arm, and show every person in there that Silas Blackwood doesn't need Cordelia Sterling's pity or her family's approval. That I can choose whoever I want, whenever I want, and make it work. His eyes locked onto mine. You said you felt rage on my behalf. Prove it. Help me turn this humiliation into power. I should have run, should have refused, and taken my chances with whatever consequences came. But there was something magnetic about him, something compelling in the way he'd turned his chair into a throne and his disability into just another fact to be managed. And maybe, just maybe, I was tired of being invisible. I don't know how to act like I belong in that world. You don't need to act. You need to look at me the way you did a moment ago, like you see me, not the chair. Can you do that? Could I? I looked at him, really looked. Saw the intelligence in his eyes, the strength in his hands, the barely contained fury that he wielded like a weapon. Saw a man who'd been handed a death sentence and turned it into an empire. Yes, I whispered. I can do that. Then let's dance, Magnolia Sawyer. He took my hand, his grip warm and calloused, stronger than I expected, and suddenly I was being pulled into a world I didn't understand, for reasons I couldn't fully process, with a man who was either my salvation or my destruction. The ballroom doors opened, music swelled, a string quartet playing something slow and haunting. Every face turned toward us. I saw shock ripple through the crowd, saw whispers start like wildfire. He saw cameras flash from the back of the room where media had been corralled. Silas wheeled forward smoothly, my hand still in his expression carved into something regal and utterly controlled. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice carrying across the massive space with natural authority. "There's been a change of plans." The room went dead silent. "My previous engagement has been dissolved. After careful consideration, I realized that I was settling for an arrangement based on family expectations rather than personal choice. Tonight, I'm correcting that mistake." He pulled me forward gently, positioning me beside his chair. Every eye in the room was on me now, calculating, judging, dissecting everything from my cheap housekeeping uniform to my unmarried hands to the shock that must have been written all over my face. "This is Magnolia Sawyer, and if she'll have me, she'll be the one I marry instead." The room exploded. Voices overlapped, questions shouted, cameras flashing like lightning. I felt dizzy, unmoored, like I'd been swept up in a tornado and was just starting to realize how high I'd been lifted. Silas looked up at me, and in his eyes I saw a challenge, a question. Was I strong enough for this? Brave enough? Desperate enough? His hand squeezed mine. "Shall we dance, Magnolia?" I looked at the wheelchair, looked at the ballroom floor, looked at 200 faces waiting to see what I'd do, how I'd react to the impossibility of what he was asking. And then I smiled. "I thought you'd never ask." I moved behind his chair, placed my hands on the handles, and began to push him toward the center of the ballroom. The crowd parted like water. The music shifted to something slower, more deliberate. And as we reached the middle of that gleaming floor, surrounded by flowers and lights and people who controlled empires, I did something that probably sealed my fate forever. I stepped around to face him, took both his hands in mine, and began to sway to the music. We weren't dancing, not really. I was moving, and he was watching me, his hands in mine, his wheelchair the fixed point around which I orbited. But it felt like dancing. It felt like defiance. It felt like two broken people. Him with his shattered spine, me with my shattered life, finding something unexpected in the wreckage. His eyes never left my face. "You're either the bravest woman I've ever met or the most foolish." "Can't I be both?" "Probably." His grip tightened on my hands. You understand there's no going back from this? After tonight, your name is attached to mine. That comes with enemies, danger, expectations you can't imagine. I've been in danger my whole life, I said quietly. At least this way I'm choosing it. Why? Why agree to this? I thought about my answer carefully. Thought about my empty apartment, my 3 jobs, my invisible existence in a city that had never seen me as anything but disposable. Thought about the way he'd looked when his bride called him broken and the way he'd looked at me when I said he was strong. Because you asked me to dance, I said simply. No one's ever asked me to dance before. Something shifted in his expression. Softened, maybe, though his face was too controlled to show much emotion. But his hands... his hands tightened on mine like he was holding on to something precious. Then we'll keep dancing, he murmured, for as long as you can stand it. The music swelled around us. The crowd watched, and somewhere in that moment, between the madness of the proposal and the impossibility of the situation, I felt something spark to life in my chest. It wasn't love. Not yet. It was something more dangerous. It was possibility. The song ended. Applause erupted. Polite, uncertain, confused. Silas released one of my hands but kept the other, pulling me down slightly so he could speak directly into my ear. There's a room upstairs, 20th floor penthouse suite. Go there. My people will bring you clothes, answer your questions. Don't leave that room until I come for you. Trust no one else. Understand? I nodded, my heart racing. Ah, good girl. He released my hand and immediately 2 men materialized beside me. Bodyguards, obviously, both built like walls. Take her upstairs, make sure she's comfortable, and make sure she's safe. As they escorted me toward a private elevator, I looked back once. Silas had been surrounded by people. Older men in suits, clearly his advisors, already talking rapidly and gesturing emphatically. But through the crowd, across the ballroom, his eyes found mine. He didn't smile, didn't wave, just looked at me with an intensity that felt like a promise and a threat all at once. The elevator doors closed. I was alone with 2 armed strangers, headed toward a penthouse suite, having just agreed to marry a Mafia boss I'd met 10 minutes ago. I should have been terrified, should have been planning my escape. Instead, I was remembering the way his hands felt in mine. The way he'd looked at me like I was visible, like I mattered, like I was something more than just the invisible girl cleaning up other people's messes. The elevator climbed higher, and with each floor, I felt my old life falling further away. By the time the doors opened on the 20th floor, I'd made my decision. I wasn't running. Not from him, not from this, not from the first real choice I'd made in years. Whatever came next, danger, darkness, the weight of a world I didn't understand. I'd face it, because Silas Blackwood had asked me to dance, and I'd said yes. The penthouse suite was obscene. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, furniture that probably cost more than I'd earn in a lifetime, artwork on the walls that looked old and important. One of the bodyguards, the bigger one with a scar across his jaw, gestured me inside. Wait here. Don't touch anything. Don't try to leave. The door closed behind them with a heavy click, and I was alone. I walked to the windows, looked out at the city spreading below like a carpet of lights. Somewhere out there was my apartment, my 3 jobs, my carefully constructed survival. It all seemed so small from up here, so fragile. My reflection stared back at me from the glass, a girl in a rumpled housekeeping uniform with wild, dark hair and eyes too big for her face. I didn't look like someone who belonged in penthouses. Didn't look like someone who could stand beside a man like Silas Blackwood and make anyone believe it. But I'd done it anyway. The door opened behind me. I spun around, expecting bodyguards, expecting Silas, expecting something familiar. Instead, a woman entered. Older, maybe 50, with silver hair pulled into a severe bun and sharp eyes that reminded me uncomfortably of birds of prey. She carried several garment bags and moved with the efficiency of someone used to being obeyed. "Miss Sawyer? I'm Mrs. Cordova. I handle Mr. Blackwood's personal affairs." She laid the garment bags across the massive bed without ceremony. "He sent me to prepare you." Prepare me for what? For everything. She unzipped the first bag, revealing a dress that shimmered like liquid silver. "There will be questions tonight. Media, family members, associates who want to understand what just happened. You need to look the part and you need to know how to play it." "I don't know how—" "That's why I'm here." She pulled out the dress, held it up against me. Assessing. "Mr. Blackwood has made his choice. My job is to make sure no one questions it. Now take off that uniform. We have work to do." I should have been offended by her brusque tone. Instead, I felt relieved. Here was someone who understood this world. Someone who could guide me through the minefield I'd just walked into. I stripped off my housekeeping uniform without ceremony. Mrs. Cordova helped me into the silver dress. It fit perfectly, which should have been impossible, but somehow wasn't. The fabric moved like water, highlighting curves I didn't know I had, making me look elegant instead of invisible. "How did you know my size?" "Mr. Blackwood is very observant." She moved behind me, began working on my hair with practiced hands. "He noticed you 3 months ago, when you first started working here." My hands froze on the dress's delicate straps. "What?" "You bumped into him in the lobby, dropped a stack of towels, apologized 6 times while picking them up. He asked about you the next day." I remembered that day, remembered nearly running into a wheelchair, remembered my mortified scramble to collect dropped linens, remembered mumbling apologies to a man whose face I'd barely glimpsed before fleeing. He remembered that. He remembers everything that matters. Mrs. Cordova's hands moved through my hair, pinning and styling with expert precision. "He's been watching you since then, discreetly, learning your patterns, your habits. When tonight's disaster happened, you weren't a random choice, Miss Sawyer. You were the choice he'd already made." The words settled over me like snow, cold, quiet, and transformative. This wasn't random. This wasn't desperation. This was something else entirely, something planned and calculated and utterly terrifying. Why didn't he just talk to me? Because he needed the right moment, the right leverage. Men in his position can't afford simple courtship. Everything has to serve multiple purposes. She finished with my hair, turned me toward a full-length mirror. I didn't recognize the woman staring back. She looked sophisticated, dangerous, like she belonged in this world of power and violence. "What am I supposed to do now?" Mrs. Cordova met my eyes in the mirror. "You're supposed to become Mrs. Blackwood. The wedding will happen within the week. The marriage contract is already being drawn up. You'll sign it, smile for cameras, and learn very quickly how to navigate a world that will try to destroy you. And if I can't, then you'll die." She said it matter-of-factly, like discussing weather. "Not from Mr. Blackwood. He's chosen you, which means he'll protect you. But his enemies will see you as a weakness to exploit. His allies will test you to see if you're worthy. The media will try to tear you apart for entertainment. You'll need to be stronger than you've ever been, smarter than you think you are, and more ruthless than feels comfortable." She pulled out a small box, opened it to reveal a ring that made my breath catch. Diamonds and emeralds, set in platinum, catching the light like captured stars. This was his mother's. "He wants you to wear it tonight." My hand trembled as she slid it onto my finger. The weight of it felt impossible, both literal and metaphorical. "I don't understand why he chose me." really chose me, not just for tonight. I'm nobody. I have nothing to offer a man like him. Mrs. Cordova's expression softened slightly. You saw him, Miss Sawyer. Not the wheelchair, not the reputation, not the power. You saw him. Do you know how rare that is? How precious? Before I could answer, the door burst open. Silas wheeled in, still in his wedding suit, but his tie was loosened and his hair slightly dishevelled. He looked like he'd been arguing, probably about me, probably about everything. His eyes found me immediately, and I watched them widen slightly at the transformation. Out, he said to Mrs. Cordova without looking away from me. She left immediately, closing the door softly behind her. We stared at each other across the ridiculous penthouse suite. The city glittered behind him, a throne of lights and power. He looked tired suddenly, the granite facade cracking just enough to show the man underneath. They want me to explain you, he said finally. My advisors, my family, everyone. They want to know who you are, where you came from, what I could possibly be thinking. What did you tell them? That it's none of their concern. He wheeled closer and I noticed his hands were shaking slightly. Just a tremor, barely visible, but there. But it is your concern. You deserve to know what you're walking into. Mrs. Cordova explained some of it. She explained the surface. Let me explain the truth. He stopped a few feet away, looking up at me with those whiskey-coloured eyes. I'm dying, Magnolia. The words hit like a physical blow. What? The bullets in my spine. As they can't remove them without killing me, but leaving them in is killing me slowly. I have maybe 2 years if I'm lucky, maybe less if I'm not. His voice was steady, clinical, like he was discussing someone else's death. That's why Cordelia's family agreed to the marriage. They knew I'd be dead soon, and she'd inherit everything. It was supposed to be a business arrangement with a built-in exit strategy. I sank onto the edge of the bed, my legs suddenly unable to hold me. You're telling me this, why? Because you need to know what you're agreeing to. This isn't a fairy tale. This is a dying man trying to secure his legacy before everything falls apart. You'll marry me, help me maintain control long enough to put things in order, and when I'm gone, you'll be compensated for your trouble. Generously. You're asking me to be your widow. I'm asking you to be my partner, for however long I have left. He moved his chair closer until his knees nearly touched mine. But I won't lie to you. I won't pretend this is anything other than what it is. A transaction. With very real dangers and very real benefits. I looked at him. Really looked. Saw the pain hiding behind his controlled expression, the fear he refused to acknowledge, the desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, he could accomplish something meaningful in the time he had left. What happens to me after? I asked quietly. When you're gone, you'll be protected, wealthy, free to do whatever you want. I'll make sure of it. And if I say no, if I walk away right now? His jaw tightened. Then you go back to your life. 3 jobs, no family. Or invisible to a city that doesn't care if you live or die. And I'll find someone else, though they won't see me the way you do. It was emotional manipulation, and we both knew it. But it was also true. Every word of it. I stood, walked to the window, looked out at the city that had never given me anything but scraps and hard lessons. Behind me, I heard the quiet whir of his wheelchair as he approached. Why did you notice me? I asked. 3 months ago in the lobby. Why remember that? Because you apologized to me. His voice was soft now, almost gentle. 6 times. Like you genuinely thought bumping into me was the worst thing you could have done. Like my inconvenience mattered more than your own embarrassment. No one apologizes to me anymore, Magnolia. They defer, they flatter, they fear. but they don't genuinely apologize for small accidents like normal human beings do. I turned to face him. So this is about wanting to feel normal. This is about wanting to feel seen by someone who isn't calculating how to use me, or waiting for me to die, or pretending my condition doesn't exist. He held my gaze. You looked at me tonight and saw a man, not a weapon, not a meal ticket, not a tragedy. A man. I'm willing to bet everything I have that a partnership built on that foundation will be stronger than one built on family alliances and political convenience. You're betting your empire on a girl you barely know. I'm betting my empire on the only person who's been honest with me in 2 years. He held out his hand. Dance with me again, Magnolia. But this time, decide if you're dancing for show, or dancing because you want to. I looked at his outstretched hand, looked at the ring already on my finger, looked at the reflection of us in the window, a man in a wheelchair and a girl in a borrowed dress, backlit by a city that would chew them both up if they showed weakness. And I realized something important. I'd been invisible my whole life. Safe, maybe. Alive, certainly. But invisible. Silas Blackwood saw me. Really saw me. And maybe that was worth the risk. Maybe that was worth everything. I took his hand. Teach me to dance your way, I said softly. Show me how to survive in your world. His fingers tightened around mine, and for the first time since I'd met him, he smiled. Really smiled. It transformed his face, made him look younger and more vulnerable, and somehow more dangerous all at once. It's going to be hard, he warned. Or brutal. There will be days you hate me, hate this choice, hate everything about this life. I've survived worse. Not like this you haven't. Then I'll learn. He pulled me closer until I was standing between his knees, until we were eye level. I can't give you a normal life, Magnolia. I can't give you years, but I can give you everything else. Protection, power, purpose. A chance to be someone who matters. Is that enough? Was it? I thought about my lonely apartment, my invisible existence, my complete lack of anyone who would notice if I disappeared tomorrow. Yes, I whispered. It's enough. He reached up, cupped my face with one hand. His palm was warm, his thumb brushing across my cheekbone with unexpected tenderness. Then let's make this interesting, he murmured. Let's make them all regret underestimating us. And then, before I could process what was happening, he pulled me down and kissed me. It wasn't gentle, it wasn't sweet. It was possession and promise and danger all wrapped together. A kiss that tasted like smoke and whiskey and decisions that couldn't be undone. My hands found his shoulders, his fingers tangled in my newly styled hair. And for a moment the whole world reduced to just this. His mouth on mine, his heartbeat racing under my palm, the terrifying certainty that I'd just crossed a line I could never uncross. When he pulled back, we were both breathing hard. 1 week, he said roughly. The wedding will be in 1 week. Between now and then, you'll learn everything you need to know. After that, you're mine. Completely. Understand? Yes. Say it properly. Yes, Silas. Good girl. He released me slowly, and his hands trailing down my arms before letting go entirely. Now go with Mrs. Cordova. She'll finish preparing you. We have appearances to make tonight, and I need you perfect. I started toward the door, then looked back. He was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Hunger, maybe, or determination, or something darker that sent a shiver down my spine. Silas? Yes? Don't die on me. The words came out fiercer than I intended. Not before I figure out what this is. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, pleasure, pain. I'll do my best, he said quietly. But I make no promises except this one. While I'm alive, no one touches you. No one hurts you. You're under my protection now, Magnolia Sawyer. That means something in this world. What does it mean? He smiled again, that dangerous smile that made my pulse spike. Oh, it means anyone who comes for you has to go through me first. And I didn't survive 3 bullets by being easy to kill. The door opened. Mrs. Cordova stood there, impatient and efficient. Come, Miss Sawyer. We have much to do. I left, but I felt his eyes on me the whole way, and as the door closed behind me, separating us, I realized I'd just agreed to marry a dying man I barely knew, in a world I didn't understand, for reasons I couldn't fully articulate. I should have been terrified. Instead, I felt alive. For the first time in my life, I felt like I mattered, like I was part of something bigger than survival, something that might actually mean something before it all fell apart. The week ahead would test me. The marriage would transform me. The dangers waiting in the shadows would try to destroy me. But I'd said yes to the dance. And I intended to see it through to whatever end was waiting. Even if that end came sooner than either of us wanted. Even if it meant losing him just as I was starting to understand what having him might mean. I'd said yes. And in Silas Blackwood's world, there was no taking it back.